We're coming to the end of this annual summit, and I'm supposed to try to give some summarizing approaches. And obviously, I've developed a 3-hour presentation that no one would want to hear after 3 hours of already in-depth discussion. So I'm not even going to attempt to be comprehensive, but in my parochial head, I think there were at least 4 important elements that we can take away, or at least that I've took away. One was indeed this whole issue of culture, both in terms of actually competing cultures, right? So you have the public culture, private culture, and their incentives in actually being part of the open data movement and the need for transparency, but also culture as the need for a vision. And I think Barry started us off with providing the vision around open data and open government within the government of Ireland. And I think that is also important to really think about what is the vision here, which is obviously more than just data. It's also about a vision with regard to how society should work, about how we can ultimately make society better as well, but also a culture of performance and really trying to become more disciplined in how we actually measure performance and benchmark what works, what does good look like. The second bucket really, and I think it came up a lot during this last panel as well, but also started already off in the first panel, which is really about products, processes, and positions. And I think the whole issue of how do we lower transaction costs by productizing some kinds of processes, but also productizing some kind of aspects around data, but also how do we do so in a way that it actually adds quality, but then the need for new positions, new professionals that can actually scale and really think this through in a meaningful way. And then related to that, of course, the issue of cost and business model, which from my point of view should be part of also data stewardship, really thinking about how do you do this in a financially sustainable way? What's the business model for doing so? The third kind of bucket was really about, as what Laura was calling the migraines, which I call what are kind of the questions for which we should optimize access to data, for which should be the priority areas that we know benefit, society would benefit from, which again goes back to then some of the discussions about high value data sets and high value questions, and how do we as a society get some consensus on what are some of those kind of areas for which both public and private needs to work together. And then the last bucket, and I'm going to conclude here, the last bucket of topics was really about the need for networking and a global conversation around the issues that we have touched upon during the last 3 hours. The fact that we need to learn from each other, the fact that we need to learn what are the incentives, what are the motivations for being part of this conversation, but also the need to learn how we can take this to the next level, because we will only be able to advance open data is to not not to work in silos. The whole idea of open data is to break silos, but then unfortunately we see quite often that we then create new silos in actually how we go about implementing open data. And I think part of the key message from my point of view, and also the key objective of today's summit, was to actually break those silos, public, private, different sectors that think they can only learn from their own sector, but we actually can learn from different sectors, and we can have also a more global conversation around those topics as well. So these were, like, from my parochial perspective, kind of 4 key takeaways. And the most important takeaway from my point of view is that everyone is here very motivated and also passionate about advancing open data. And I would like to thank everyone, the audience, and especially also the panelists, for taking time into their busy schedule. This was a 3-hour in-depth conversation, and I think the attendance, the participation was at an extremely high level, and shows the passion and the commitment that everyone brings to the table. So with that, we'd like to thank everyone for being part of this. We will try to distill additional takeaways and share that publicly as well. And obviously, this has been recorded for those who couldn't join. We had more than 250 registrations, and obviously not everyone was able to join today. And for those who cannot or could not join, we will make this recording also publicly available. Thanks so much. Stay well and see you next year, because the idea is to do this on an annual basis. But obviously, we're not going to wait a year. We will touch base in between the different summits in order to engage with all of you as we are advancing open data in the public good. Thanks so much and stay well. Take care. Bye-bye.